am a filmmaker, and I've spent my life observing others. I've always looked outwards, visually storing the images of other people's lives, never looking inwardly at my own life, my own painful past. I've struggled to keep the dark images of being bullied locked away, but no matter how hard I try, I am still haunted, still affected, still angry. Unlocking the past has created some disturbing memories, evoked some shocking images, made me revisit some uncomfortable moments, but it's how I remember it. But this is not a journey I will take on my own. In order to understand more about being bullied, I've found others who have their own stories to tell.
I don't honestly know how I've coped. I don't even know how I've came this far.
That is the one memory that I'll take with me for the rest of my life.
Maybe in time I'll be able to forgive them people, but I'll never forget.
A student from a few years above me would yell out, "Fat bastard."
It'll always be there. It's the one thing whenever you close your eyes at night.
You come home with bruises all around your legs.
Who are you? I've never seen you before. What have I done to you?
You know that what he did wasn't right.
Nobody deserves that torture.
I was bullied.
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 I was bullied. I was bullied. I was bullied. I was bullied. I was bullied.
I spent a year of my life making this film and meeting the victims of bullying. For many of them, they couldn't even appear in the film as the bullying had affected them so badly. For me, this is the beginning of a journey that I've been on for 25 years. A journey that will hopefully put to bed the demons that have haunted me and in some ways moulded me into the very person I am today. A journey in which I may even get to meet the man who bullied me. Unfortunately, my story is an all too familiar one. Like many, I was a victim of bullying at school. There's nothing special or unusual about my experiences. In fact, some might say they're quite normal. Many of you watching may have even more harrowing stories to tell. But it's my story nonetheless, and I have spent many, many years of my life coming to terms with it. To try and make some sense of what happened to me, I met one of Ireland's leading authorities on bullying, Professor Mona O'Muir of Trinity College Dublin, and told her my story. I was bullied 25 years ago, and I mean, I suppose one of the big questions that underlines this programme for me is why, after so long, am I still feeling the ill effects of it?
Well, first of all, Eamonn, can I say that it is very common for people who have been bullied to then have these experiences. So, for example, I would get many letters from adults who then talk about their victimization as if it actually only happened yesterday. So I'd be very interested in hearing, about your negative experiences.
The first day that I went to the school, I went into the assembly hall, and I was there with, it was about 300-400 kids, and I obviously was very, very nervous. And I remember within about 2 minutes of being in the assembly hall, this guy, and I remember who he was as well, run over and jumped on top of me and pinned me down with, my hands, his knees on both my arms, and started to wiggle my glasses and slap my face and humiliated me in front of everybody else. And I remember thinking, I was completely horrified, and I was thinking, what sort of place is this? I mean, it was full of savagery. And I always remember them being men. I was 13, and I really was 13. I wore little gold-rimmed glasses, I had a blazer on, I had a little brown sort of briefcase. And these guys were big, strong men. I mean, I always remember one of them had the master bully, if I can call him that, had a hairy chest and a big mane of hair.
Did you get a sense at the time that, say, the teachers were aware of this going on?
I think the teachers were aware of the hostility that I was facing.
If we were to blame anybody, okay, one would in a sense blame the school, because say if the school had a zero acceptance to aggressive behaviour, then these characters would have been taken aside and said this is not to be tolerated. Your behaviour was normal, you weren't doing anything. But they were acting out of this sort of almost a predatory type of bullying.
Katrina is 15, 2 years older than I was when I was bullied. But unlike me at her age, she has the courage to talk about it.
I don't think I'll ever forget it until the day I'm in my grave myself, like, but they called me fat, and that I was big, that I got that way then when they did call me fat, and they called me big-headed, and they called me every names that was, they called me rabbit, and you know, names that I thought was actually true, and lunchtime I never really saw the dining hall much. I always went to the ladies' toilets where I'd have some peace, at least.
How did it make you feel?
It made me feel kind of dirty in a halfway because I had to resort to the matter of eating my lunch in the toilets.
Katrina endured this name-calling and abuse every day for 4 years. Her mother Anne still remembers the pain of discovering her diary.
One day I was making our beds and writing up, and I come across a diary she'd wrote. And in that diary there's stuff in it, what all them children done to her.
In what way did that make you feel?
Well, as parents, you think that you're there to support your child and try and help it, but what were you to do? Like, your hands were tied, you'd been to the school, you'd been everywhere, nobody listened.
Did the teachers do anything?
No, I couldn't go to the teachers because I felt as if they didn't listen to me. You know, I was sick and tired of coming home and telling Mum and Daddy what was going on, because, you know, they already knew what was going on, and I couldn't do nothing about it.
Does it make you feel angry? Does it make you feel bitter? Does it make you feel frustrated? I mean, how does it make you feel as a mum?
I've been very cross, very angry, but I never was as much hurt in my life. To watch a child to go to school is supposed to be the happiest day of our life, and it's the worst nightmare of our life.
After meeting Katrina's mother, I decided to visit my own mum to see what she remembered about my days at school. And with some gentle persuasion, she agreed to talk. What was I like at that time? What do you remember about me as a 12-year-old kid?
You're very good and a great personality, and you're very talented and great sense of humour, very funny. and a good, very good child. And I had no problems whatsoever with you, none.
Did you notice any changes in my personality throughout the year?
Well, you were withdrawn and you used to go to your room a lot. But when I asked you what was wrong, you wouldn't tell me. You weren't just a happy-go-lucky child that you were.
Did I ever talk to you about what was happening at school, or did anything ever happen that you remember?
You got a new jacket, I bought you a new jacket, and you came home and at that time they were all the fashion, these jackets, and you come home without yours. I asked you where your jacket was and you said that you had forgotten it, and same the next day and the next day, and then you said you lost it. And it was only when I realized, you know, when I heard after it that you had been bullied and that they'd torn your jacket and, you know, and they had beaten you. That's what I regret, that I didn't know. That I wasn't aware of the fact that you were being taunted and tormented.
You didn't know that they'd stolen it off me?
No, I didn't. When you said you'd lost it, well, I thought you had lost it. You just didn't tell. I think you were scared, really, really scared, that if you told it to me or anyone that you'd get bullied more, which you probably would have, because that's what bullies are all about.
Even now, 25 years on, it was still very difficult to talk to my mum about my experiences. I somehow feel guilty about not telling her what was going on at the time. The truth is, there are other reasons why a 13-year-old boy can't tell the people who are closest to him.
I would just love to know, you know, why you, if you can remember any of the emotions, any of the real reasons why you wouldn't tell her.
We were having our own sort of family difficulties at the time. We'd just moved in with my grandfather because my granny had passed away, and my mum was the daughter chosen to move into, you know, the house and look after him. And I think, in some respect, I maybe was a little bit more mature, or thinking myself as more mature, and didn't want to burden my mother any further with the worry that there was something happening to me. And in fact, I suppose if I'm being perfectly honest, was a little bit afraid to bring the stories home, to be seen by my father as a coward, because he very much had the attitude that you've got to go out and fight, and you've got to stand up for yourself. And you know, I mean, that was how he had been brought up, and he was very much a fighter.
Parents, you know, for example, you had a father, which is that's actually very common for a father to give advice to their son. Just go on in there, for example, and give as good as you get. But they never know what your opposition is. So in that sort of sense, you are really up against it, because I think one of the issues about bullying is essentially this abuse of power.
Third year, it really started more than anything else. I had my fair share of black eyes and in the hospital, because you know I spent as much time in the caretaker's car going down to the hospital as I did in the classrooms, probably for third year.
Like me, Andrew was very different from all the other kids in his class. He was slightly chubby and had an American twang to his accent. The perfect target for the bully.
I couldn't tell anybody that I was being bullied. I couldn't tell. I had no girlfriend to confide in, because at 16 years of age, the last thing you want to do is tell your girlfriend, oh, by the way, I'm getting beat up every day in school. I didn't have any confidence, I didn't have any self-esteem, not in school. Everybody wanted me to be the quiet one that sat in the corner, and any time anybody wanted to thump something, they just come to me. Looking back on it, this is the way that I think people thought. He's just looking at attention. He's not, there's nothing wrong with him. What's he want to go to hospital for? He's been beat up again. Like, go away and grow up. It's you that has the problem, it's not everybody else.
Did that not make you feel very
alone? Unwanted? By anybody? Yeah.
The sense of isolation and fear can often be overwhelming. The schools don't want to know. You're afraid to tell your parents. You're embarrassed and feel a great deal of shame. Everyone has been bullied, so people just tell you to get on with it. Ignore them. It'll pass. People hear you, but they don't listen to you. You feel completely alone. I remember clearly sitting in a classroom and the teacher in the middle of a lesson and everything going just fuzzy and that sense of fear of the bell, fear of the bell. You're dead after the class and we're going to get you and we're taking your dinner money off you. I mean, that constant fear and I suppose churning of the stomach relentlessly every day.
I think, when it comes to somebody being victimized, you obviously is a very good sort of example, because again, we know from research and from anecdotal evidence how children's concentration goes, because all one's cognitive resources essentially simply then is going towards how to keep safe. You probably experience, great tension. You probably experienced disturbed sleep. The worry of what's happening to them once the bell rings and they're now out into the corridor or they're out into the playground or whatever.
The bullies pushed Andrew to the point of no return. He followed my father's advice and fought back. But he has spent the last 13 years dealing with the consequences.
It's so real, as I say. I can close my eyes and I can just see it all happening and I can see it all unfolding. And I've spent nearly 13 years now going through it all in my head and thinking, what could I have done different to change it? We were in a classroom and the teacher left the classroom. This wee insignificant fella in the class came up and started pushing and pushing and pushing me, and like the leader of the gang he thinks he is anyway, or thought he was. I told him to go away, sit down, leave me alone, I wasn't in the mood. And he pushed and pushed and he just pushed once too often and I hit him. The teacher came back into the room and like everybody was in silence then. Teacher left the room again and he came running across, rolled me round so that he was sitting on top of me and he was just raining punches down into my face. Whenever you see a boxer fighting, he'll duck and he'll protect himself and whatever, but when the punches are raining in, he blinks, closes his eyes. I couldn't. I had to watch every punch coming into my face because I didn't know what else was going to happen to me. And that one memory will stay with me for the rest of my life. I went out of the classroom, into the corridor, and there was red door, red swinging doors in the car door, and there was a bit of glass in it, and I put my fist straight through the middle of the glass. And ended up with a broken nose. It said there was a wee chip to the top of this bone, 2 black eyes, 38 stitches in my wrist, 12 stitches at the back of my hand, 5 stitches there, and the loss of feeling in that finger. Totally for the rest of my life now. It's gone. Like I don't have any feeling.
When I hear Andrew's story, I can't help feeling a little pathetic. Guilty for whining on about being called a few names, getting the odd kicking, being threatened and intimidated. I have, after all, only experienced what most people have. But how trauma affects you is very personal and can never be underestimated. The fears and worries of that 13-year-old boy has lived with me ever since, and has made me feel a great deal of anger towards my bully. I still think about him and wonder sometimes what he's doing now. Has he made a success of his life? Is he still a bully? But I suppose what I really want to know is whether he is sorry for what he done to me. They started calling me names, and there was a big film out at the time, and a TV series, and they belittled me with this particular name that you know I don't really want to repeat, and I can't believe that just being called names had such a detrimental effect to my personality. I remember going to a function within the last year or two, and a guy I hadn't seen in a long time walked over to me and jovially called me that name, and it completely paralysed me. And he wasn't saying the name to me to belittle me or to make me feel small. He remembered me as this person, and that's one of the big things that happened in the school, and why I felt so bad and so alone in the school, in that everybody in the school seemed to embrace this name calling towards me.
It's very sad that you had to have those very negative experiences, because in a sense all of that could have been in a way prevented after the very initial attack, when, say, if a teacher had taken you aside and had sort of more like explained that, look, these guys are jumping all over you because essentially, particularly the ringleader, has a need to show dominance amongst the peer group. It's his way of gaining status. Once they'd kind of shown this dominance and that they were now able to manipulate you, they could move on to the more sort of psychological forms of bullying, which was the name calling.
I met Adam, who, like Katrina, was relentlessly bullied at school. His way of coping was to comfort eat. The more he was bullied about being overweight, the more he ate. He is 17 years of age and 21 stone. Did the kids taunt you about your weight?
As I got larger, the taunts started to become more focused on my weight than anything else. Kids started calling me after a while fat bastard. I had virtually no self-esteem by then. I was really starting to go into my own little shell, and I was getting fatter and fatter. It was becoming harder to find any clothes in kids' departments at shops that fitted me. It's like the labels that you never lose, you know, rat boy, fat ass, you know, fat shit, and all this, and it makes you feel almost violated that someone's taking away your identity and like a nobody, you know. I was somebody in the sense that I was the one to bully.
I constantly ask myself, am I being too sensitive? Should I just get over it and move on? But the truth is that when I remember the relentless nature of the abuse that I took, living in a constant state of fear, the utter loneliness that I felt, I can't just get over it. Bullying completely shattered my confidence and self-esteem, and I have had to learn to cope with this ever since.
One of the things that people often say to me, you know, when I sort of say about being bullied, was that I was sort of too sensitive, that, you know, that name calling, that being picked at, that sort of idea of if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger, you know. I mean, and I sort of resent that in some respects, because what I feel and what I felt is real to me, and it doesn't matter, I feel, if I'm being too sensitive. I mean, it's how I feel.
It is so important to dispel the myth that bullying is a normal part of growing up and that it's character building. Is nothing of the sort, because we know that quite apart from the physical injuries, it's the psychological injuries, the name calling, and we know now that actually name calling can essentially then change people's identity, and words can break your heart. So what is normal about that? What is character forming about that?
I sometimes think about what happened to me and wonder whether I'm blowing it out of all proportion. Was it really that bad? Was I being too sensitive? If I was, I'd soon find out, as I went along to meet Seamus Nugent, who was in my class all those years ago.
It was an interesting thought and a very sobering thought that I had a year ago about you. I remember just doing something one day and just suddenly thinking about Eamonn Devlin from down at Moore.
It's amazing.
And about the kind of torment that you went through at school. And I was thinking what it must have been like for you then and what it must be like for you now. Because any kind of a negative mark or scar in your life is always there.
I always ask the question, did it really happen to me? Was it as severe as I imagine? And, you know, or am I blowing it out of proportion, dramatising it just because I'm making a documentary?
I don't think you are dramatising it. You were bullied relentless. I just remember whole days of you at school, and a number of those characters just was continuously calling that phrase that they put on you, or title, the first day or two after you started. And I remember you go through whole days of that at school in different classes with different teachers.
When I started school, it became like a cancer. It started off very, very small, being isolated to those 3 or 4 people. And I mean, when a group of kids see that one person is vulnerable or soft or weak, you know, they all start to gang up because it makes them all feel better about themselves. And it started a momentum, you know, where I couldn't go into Dungannon at the weekends for fear of being called names in front of my parents.
There was a couple of instances at school and on the bus where people had attempted to bully me, and I know how I felt at the time. I felt vulnerable, I felt scared, albeit that it was for a very short time, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. But you were obviously going through that day in, day out.
Did I deserve it in any way? Did I do anything that warranted the sort of treatment that I received?
Simply no. No one deserves that kind of treatment. No one in society.
We all find our own way to deal with the pain and long-term scars of bullying, and how we cope is unique to all of us.
I have spent a long time thinking about why it happened to me. Why me? What could I have done different? I couldn't have done anything different. you know, and it affected me greatly after that. You know, you find yourself not sleeping, crying yourself to sleep, and these are things that people don't know about me. You know, like people look at me now and see a big fella with a shaved head. They don't see a scared kid that had to pick up courage every day to go into school for those last 3 months, and behind the scenes was totally losing it. I found myself more involved in drugs. You know, anything that I think that, looking back on it now, anything that I could see as an escape. If I went out and I had a couple of drinks, or I went out and I'd taken something, you know, I'd had more confidence then. I found it easier to be me whenever I wasn't straight.
One of my key coping mechanisms in life has been, unfortunately, to become very, very sarcastic and to use sort of, I suppose, putting other people down as a means of coping, and also to be overly confident of going in and potentially taking over a situation. I mean, is that normal?
Of course, by being sarcastic in some ways, you are showing your sort of dominance there in a social situation. You're perhaps getting in there on the attack before they can kind of get at you, so it's a form of sort of get your retaliation in first, in a sense. So of course you've developed a coping mechanism, and you know that is good. And bullies, by the way, hate being gobsmacked, because if anything, they're quite thick. And a lot of them, the typical bullies, of course, will use physical force. The more, one might call, the sophisticated ones, the more subtle, the more cowardly ones will, of course, find the more indirect forms of getting at people.
Who ate all the pies? Who ate all the pies? You fat. You fat. You ate all the pies. Fat.
Adam's way of coping was to make a film about his experiences in the comfort of his own home.
Fat turd.
But even in this safe environment, Adam received a series of crank calls from a determined bully.
Hello? What do you hope to achieve by doing this? How did you get this number? What? How did you get this number? What? Bye. It was almost like being back in school, you know, being bullied yet again. I thought that, you know, I felt safe at home. I thought, you know, no, at least no one can get to me here. But I don't know how these people got my number. I don't even know who they were. But
did you recognize any of their voices?
I didn't. I didn't recognize them at all. I mean, they sounded like fairly young teenagers. I just want to be a normal kid.
Do you feel making this film sort of in some way gives you a focus and takes your mind away from, you know, what you've experienced in the past and possibly being lonely in the house here?
It's kind of helping me to face some of my demons from my past, like, you know, bullying and my weight problem, and I would say that the two are absolutely linked.
Adam and Katrina have been isolated by the bullying. They have had to learn to cope with what has happened to them, alone. It is difficult to know what the long-term effects of this painful suffering will be.
Since I stopped school, I am a lot happier than I have been in a long time, but at the same time, I'm very lonely. You know, I have one good friend, and that's it. And you know, the rest of the time, basically, it's just me, myself, and I here.
The bullies have persecuted Katrina to the point where her only release was to self-harm.
Just tell me about, you know, you said to me some time ago that, you know, you were making yourself sick, you were breaking bones and stuff.
Yeah.
Explain that to me.
Well, you know, when school got so tough, when it got so much tough that I couldn't take anymore, that's when I'd stoop to breaking bones.
What bones did you break? Tell me about those.
I was so angry. There's so much anger in me. You know, I had to take it out in something, so I hit the wall, and you know, a couple of whacks of the wall broke it, and it was by that time that gave me about 1 or 2 weeks off. So in my mind, that was a good. I don't care what physical pain I was going through, as long as I got 2 weeks off.
She told me that she was breaking knuckles and punching walls and trying to do anything to avoid school. Were you aware of this at the time?
She never told me what happened. She'd always say something else happened it. And I used to take her to casualty. If it was her finger, she'd say it was a ball. She was playing with a ball that done it. Or one time she broke her toe. She said it was a door she broke them on.
What sort of things were they telling her at school?
Before she went to the dentist, her teeth came out in the front. She had a brace on. They used to call her rabbit teeth. They called her everything and anything underneath the sun they could call her. Till last year, she snapped. It just had driven her to such a length that she ended up in the Inniskin hospital. She had stopped eating. She thought she was fat, she thought she was big, all what they had told her that she was. She got this into her head, that was her. It pulled her down to the lowest of stream. We were standing, going round after her and watching her and just checking what she was eating, checking that she done all that was right to keep her alive, just.
Your mum was saying to me that, I know she shouldn't have, but she read a wee bit of your diary.
Yeah.
About taking your own life.
Yeah, that was going through my head at one stage, but you know, I was so low, and there was so many people in the school that was at me. I was going through such a difficult time, and I just couldn't take any more, and I just wanted to be gone.
From her diary, she said at her lowest point, she'd actually thought of taking her own life. I mean, it must be the most horrendous thing to have to read or hear as a mum.
It is, because at one time we used to watch her because we did think she was going to go that far. We did watch her.
Thank God an awful lot of people just don't commit suicide, but a lot of youngsters, I think, quite seriously consider it. So there's suicidal ideation, as we say, which is one of, I think, the most awful and frightening aspects of this. But that's partly when I think one has reached a stage when one really feels powerless, helpless, and sadly a lot of shame. because I think of one's feeling that one is unable to fight back or to right the situation.
There were multiple times where I thought maybe this would just be easier if I killed myself. I mean, just you know, thinking, you know, walking down the street, what would happen, you know, if I just jumped out in front of that bus or something like that, you know. And it was just that's how desperate I was getting.
Bullying has had its effects to varying degrees on all of the people I've met, but at least they are still here to tell their stories. We're only left with a few pictures of Denise Bailey and the bittersweet memories of her older sister, Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane, just tell me a little bit about Denise, what sort of a girl she was, you know, what she was like at school, around the house, that type of thing.
Very funny. Very fun-loving, good sense of humour, always laughing, constantly had her mouth hanging open. She had her tongue pierced and it was constantly sticking it out at everybody, and you know, she was very outgoing, very friendly, good with new people. You know, she enjoyed life.
Denise Bailey was your typical bubbly 14-year-old. I was somehow able to cope, to endure the suffering, the pain. Denise couldn't.
She'd befriended a girl. They had been friends for quite a long period of time. They were actually best friends. They had a disagreement over a boy who both of them had been going out with. She had started then to make threats to Denise, and that was through text messages through friends, you know, shouting at her in the street. And about a week before Denise took her life, she was attacked. They physically fought. As she came home from school, she had gotten off a school bus and was attacked by this girl, and she actually had her nose bitten. And when she died, then you can actually still see the marks on her nose of where she had been bitten across the nose by the girl who had been bullying her.
What way has it affected you?
Well, it's been hard. When you see her friends and you see girls that are the same age as she was in school when they were in the same year, and they chummed around together, it's very hard to see all those girls grown and having families and knowing that Denise will never have that. You know, that's really hard. It's hard that she doesn't get to see. Sorry. That she doesn't get to see my family grow either.
Sarah Jane, what does something like this do to a family?
It's heartbreaking for a young person, a child, to take their own lives because of something like this. It's so difficult to comprehend. Suicide in itself is hard enough, but when you know that it started, you know, because of bullying, because of girls being girls and arguing and fighting, I know that all do, but for some people they really just can't handle those sort of situations.
No bully can possibly understand the damage they are causing, because every victim reacts according to their own sensibilities. The trauma inflicted stays with you.
For years, anytime I would go near that school, I would shudder. I would just feel ill. My sister had a school play that she was doing, and it was on the campus of the school, and I decided that I would face it and I would go in there. At the end of this performance, I went outside to go to the car, and I saw some of my former classmates, and I went over to them to say hello, and one of them proceeded to kneel behind me. I wanted to give me a shove, and I fell over, and it was just another one, yet another incident. You know, what have I done lately to deserve that treatment? And since then, if I've glanced one of these people, I'm honestly a bit scared.
I haven't seen my bully since I left school, and in many ways meeting him scares the hell out of me.
There can be very positive features in meeting with one's tormentor, but equally there could be risks. And I'm just sort of wondering, in your case, you know, have you had any desire perhaps to gain closure by wanting to meet with your tormentor?
I am interested in meeting the guy who tormented me. I'm sort of keen to sort of meet him and say, look, do you remember what happened? But what I'm afraid of is that, first of all, he says, I don't remember you. I don't remember ever bullying you. And if I did do anything that was aggressive or nasty towards you, it was just kid stuff. I was just having a bit of crack. There was no malice or harm or intent, you know. And I'm left sitting with all my expectations, or I want him to say, yes, I remember. I've thought about you on occasions, and I'm sorry. I would hate for someone to do that to my children. I'm now happily married, and I'm a good person now, and look, that was wrong of me in those days, and you know, I regret what happened, and it's those expectations that I fear being crushed and shattered.
If I was in your shoes, I'd want to do exactly the same thing. Find out why. Why did you make my life hell at school?
Do you think that he'll remember it?
I would be surprised if he didn't, because of the nature, again, because it was relentless. It was never ending during that second year that you were at school. And even if they don't talk to you, at least you can say, well, at least I've made that effort. and they have a bigger problem with this than yourself.
Seamus's words have somehow encouraged me to go ahead and meet the bully, but I'm still really unsure. By chance, Andrew met his bully on a night out.
And he still thinks he's hard as nails. We were in a pub in Lisburn, and me and two of my friends, and he came round to the top of the stairs, and he was with a friend of his. So then he came round and he said, "You'd love to kill me." And I said, "Nothing will give me greater pleasure. You're not worth it." And he went mad. And he started, "Come on, we'll sort this out now," and whatever else. Like, I have no want to, revenge isn't what I want out of it. All I want is that what happened to me can serve as a lesson for somebody else and help somebody else. Not, his revenge on him. I'd like to know why, or why he thought that it was okay to bully me, or what, other than what I've taken out of it, what his reasons for doing it were.
I decided to go ahead and find my bully, and was shocked at what I discovered. I've been looking for him and trying to find him, and I came across a guy who knows him and knows where he lives now, etc. And he said to me, "Look, why on earth would you want to meet that ignoramus?" He said, "I know a guy who was in a sort of a setup with this bully of yours." He said, "And he almost had a nervous breakdown because of the way this guy treated him, and that happened 3 years ago." And in some respects, it made me feel, oh, do I really now want to go and actually give him the opportunity of rejecting me again, of making me feel small again and not allowing me to achieve what I want to achieve? Or do I feel secretly happy that, he's still the same, he hasn't changed, he's still a nasty, horrible person who can still push people to the edge?
I mean, there's a huge percentage of youngsters who, if their bullying behavior at school is not challenged, will go into life and actually then become a violent adult. And here we have then a sort of a classical example of that, and the mere fact that he's been referred to now as a sort of, why would you want to sort of meet that ignoramus, in a sense supports then the research literature.
Will he meet me? Will he acknowledge the fact that he was a bully? What would I say to him? If he meets me, will he dismiss me? Laugh at me? Maybe he'll bully me again. Make me feel small and insignificant one last time. What would he call me? He probably thinks that name he branded me with all those years ago is my real name. Would I have to call myself that name for him to recognize me? I genuinely don't know what to do. To help me with my decision, I met Jim Deeds, a trained counsellor, and told him my story. From a TV perspective, I should go and meet the guy who bullied me. It gives everybody at home the resolution. There he met the guy who bullied him, and this is what happened, and didn't it end up happy ever after? Or perhaps not, because that's part of...
That's the gamble.
Why I'm fearful. But part of me also says, does he deserve the opportunity, the platform, to put his
answers forward to say.
Well, that brings us to the heart of what we want to discuss, doesn't it? And I think right at the start of this project, you seem to have been wrestling with, well, who is making this programme? Is it Eamonn the producer or Eamonn the human being? I guess what I'd like to ask is, what is the main emotion that you feel as a producer?
If you look at it from a producer's point of view, in the cold light of day, if this probably wasn't a project involving me, I would probably encourage the person to go ahead and meet the bully, because that, in theory, would give the closure that everybody would possibly be seeking.
So the producer-director wants a nice finished product and a nice clean ending?
Yes.
Okay. Which we all know from life ain't the way it always works. Okay. Ultimately, Eamonn, whether people watch this and feel well done or that was awful, ultimately has no bearing on your life. The effects of bullying are felt in here. And the remedy to that needs to be about looking inside and not needing other people to see you and validate you not being small and insignificant.
Even the bully?
Even the bully. If you can approach this decision feeling that you are not small and insignificant, with the integrity that you've shown all along, whatever decision you make, Eamonn, will be the right decision. But that will be the right decision for you and for no one else.
My bully always believed that I was too afraid to tell anyone, that I would suffer in silence and endure the pain. That's, I suppose, what gave him the power. But making this film has given me the power, so I've decided not to meet him.
I had to watch every punch coming into my face.
I didn't want to live my life anymore because it was just absolutely ruined.
Maybe it's just be easier if I killed myself.
I was bullied.
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 I was bullied. I was bullied. I was bullied. I was bullied.
I was bullied.
I hope my bully watches this film and feels sorry for the hurt and pain that he has caused. Perhaps he may feel ashamed of his actions. He may then even want to meet me. Perhaps I will meet him then. I still cannot answer the question, why me? But I know one thing. What happened is not your fault. You're not to blame. It's their fault. The bullies are to blame.